Good morning and welcome to She Rocks at College Work on You Wednesdays. So every Wednesday here on YouTube at about 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, I, your host, Clarissa Rodriguez, creator and founder of She Rocks at College, am going to be going live sharing with you some tips and strategies that will help you grow as a student, grow as a woman, grow as a human being on this planet who's going to, go out and change this world and contribute. And today we're talking all about study guides and how to create a study guide for your classes when your professor doesn't provide you with one. So for those of you, if you're not familiar with what a study guide is, a study guide typically is a checklist that is given to you by your professor, although I find that in the college setting, most of the time, you're not going to be given a study guide, and the responsibility of knowing what is going to be on the exam and making sure that you know everything really lands on the student. But in the chance that you actually get a study guide from your professor, really its intention is to be a checklist and a guideline for you, where the professor is basically saying on that study guide, hey, this is what I'm going to expect you to be able to talk about, know, distinguish between on this exam. These are all the topics that you could possibly see on the exam. So just make sure that you know all of these topics, that you know how to use these formulas, that you understand the differences, the similarities, and that you're going to be able to show your mastery of the material. And that's really what the purpose of a study guide is. And like I said, in the college setting, a lot of the times professors won't provide you with a study guide. So it's really on you to sort of create one for yourself. But, how do we do that? Because most often we're not taught that in high school because it's handed to us then. So what I'm going to do today is walk you through how I use a PowerPoint to create a study guide that I can use to reference, to check my understanding of what will possibly show up on the exam. And the reason why I'm using the word possibly is because there really is no guaranteed way for us to know the exact questions that are going to show up on the exam unless we are given a practice exam and the professor has said this practice exam is exactly like the actual exam will be. I'm just going to switch around a couple of words or a couple of numbers, or unless you've stolen the exam, which I hope that you have not done that. And so really what we're doing is we are taking our best guess at what is going to show up on the exam by utilizing the materials that were given to us by our professor. And those materials are typically a syllabus, reading assignments, and handouts and PowerPoints, or even homework assignments and practice exams. So you're going to use all of that in conjunction to create your own study guide. So I'm going to be, for today's purposes, showing you how I would use a PowerPoint to create a study guide for myself. And again, a study guide is just a checklist for me to create so that I can go down that checklist and say, yes, I know this topic. I can talk about it. I'd be able to identify things on this. I can tell you the similarities and differences. I can use this formula. I can solve this type of equation. I can figure out this type of problem. And you're just checking off, what you understand and what you don't understand. Because ideally, if you understand everything that's on that study guide that you either was given to you by your professor or that you're creating, it means that you're probably going to pass that exam, if not achieve a high mark. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you. And let me actually just go ahead and make myself a circle so that I am not taking up the entire screen. Okay, perfect. All right, so does everyone see the screen that I am showing you right now? I just want to, if you can, in the comments, if you're watching live, first of all, say hello. This is an interactive experience. So if you are seeing my screen, go ahead and comment and say, yes, I see that you are looking at a biology PowerPoint. And then what you should also see is a untitled document. Okay, so the first thing that I do is I'm going to go ahead and just give this untitled document a title. So let's pretend that this is exam 1 for biology. And let's pretend that this is chapter 1. And it's cells. So that's going to be our title. Okay. And you can put here study guide. Okay. So I'm going to go over back to my, I'm going to go back over here to my actual PowerPoint. And what I'm going to do is I am going to take a look at the title of the PowerPoint. So this is Cell Types and Structures. So a title, okay, I'm gonna talk to you guys like you've never seen this before, because I think that that is the level sometimes that we have to break things down so that people can actually understand the process behind it. So I'm going to look at the title. And the reason why I'm looking at the title is because the title is telling me what this PowerPoint, this chapter, this lecture is about. So from the title, I know that today, whether I'm reading a textbook or reading a PowerPoint or attending lecture, today, what I'm going to learn is all of the different cell types and all of the different cell structures. So then I go back over to my my blank document, and I'm going to type in a question, and the question is going to be, what are all of the different cell types? What are all of the different cell structures? And these two questions are going to begin my study guide. So again, like I said, a study guide is a checklist for yourself that will basically give you a gauge on whether or not you know all the information that might show up on the exam. Now, this is a study guide that you're creating. So you're creating it based off of what your professor has given to you as resources. Those resources are, I'm going to make this bigger. Those resources are your syllabus. Sometimes all they use is a textbook. Sometimes they use a textbook and a PowerPoint in combination. And typically the PowerPoint and the chapter that they give to you in a textbook will be based off of each other. So it doesn't really matter which one you choose. Pick the one that you like best. I find that the textbook usually gives more information, and I just use the PowerPoint as a way to create my study guide, but my actual notes come from a textbook. Okay, and then sometimes your professor doesn't give you a PowerPoint, they don't give you a textbook, and all they do is lecture just with their words. And you're going to have to learn that professor's teaching style and learn what's important to them by going to lecture, okay? In this case where you're not given a guidance because you don't have a PowerPoint, you don't have a textbook, it might be a good idea to actually record the lecture itself. But these two questions are going to start your study guide. So then we're going to go back to the PowerPoint, and we're going to go click on the actual first PowerPoint itself. The first thing that you want to do is look at the title, prokaryotic versus eukaryotic. Whenever you see the word versus, it means there are some similarities and there are some differences. There are some pros, there are some cons. You're expected to know the similarities, the differences, the pros, the cons, and you're expected to compare and contrast these things. So what I do is I will then, whenever I see the word versus, I know that I need to compare and contrast these two things that they're talking about. If this was an ethics class, typically we're talking about, with versus, we're talking about pros and cons. In classes like biology, chemistry, you're usually talking about the similarities and the differences. So in this case, I'm going to come back to my study guide and I'm going to write, what are the similarities between prokaryotic cells and eukaryotic cells? What are the differences? Again, I am not writing notes here. I am not reading a textbook. I'm not using the PowerPoint to take notes from. Right now, I'm basically just going through the PowerPoint to create a study guide for myself. And all I'm doing is literally looking at the titles of the PowerPoint slides. And if the PowerPoint slide itself has subtitles, I might also use them to create a study guide for myself. So I'm going to move on to the next title, and as I'm looking at it, it's exactly the same as the one before. But what I can see here is that they're giving me some examples of the different types of prokaryotic cells and eukaryotic cells. So again, this is where I'm saying that I might look at the subtitles to see is there any information that I can draw from this that will help me to create a study guide. And yes, there is. Here we have some examples. So I'm going to go back over to my study guide and I'm going to put what are some examples of prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. I'm just going to number these just because I like the way it looks better. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go back over to my PowerPoint. Okay, and I'm doing this on the computer. It's easier when you print out the PowerPoint and you're either writing out by hand your questions or you are typing it up. It's kind of annoying to me to have to go back and forth, but some students like to type. Do whatever works for you. So I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint and I'm going to move on to the next slide. Now this next slide has a new title and it is talking about the plasma membrane, right? So I'm going to create a question based off of this title. The other thing that I want to notice is that there's an image here that's basically pointing out a lot of different structures. So I can assume that we're probably going to go into these structures in more detail. I'm also seeing that it looks like the plasma membrane contains all these things here. And again, I'm just going based off of the title. Maybe I've never taken a bio class before, but this is how you create study guides, is by just looking at the information that's in front of you. So what is a plasma membrane and what is its purpose? All right, so I lost my PowerPoint slide here. Here we go. All right, so next PowerPoint slide is the cytoplasm. Okay, that's the title here. So I'm just going to create a question based off of this. So what is the cytoplasm in a cell? How do I know it's in a cell? Because we're talking about cell types and cell structures. So everything that I see on this PowerPoint is going to be either a cell type or it's going to be a cell structure, right? How do I know that information? I'm looking at the stuff, the information that's right in front of my eyes. I'm not guessing here. I'm just taking the information that is on my PowerPoint and I'm utilizing it to create a study guide for myself. This process of creating this study guide for yourself will take you anywhere between 30 to 45 minutes, but it is key to helping you to prepare for an exam, because not only do you now have a study guide that you can use as a checklist to say, hey, do I know this stuff? Do I not know this stuff? But now this can also serve as a guide for when you're actually reading your textbook. And you know what to write down because you have a question here. So what are the different cell types? So as you're reading the textbook and you're seeing, oh, there are 2 cell types, you can write, there are 2 cell types. Cell type number 1 is a prokaryotic cell. Cell type number 1 is a eukaryotic cell. And then again, you can go through all of these questions to help guide your reading and your note taking so that you're only writing down the need to know information. And again, you can pull out the same information from your textbook, from your PowerPoint. So I would go in here and for a prokaryotic cell versus a eukaryotic cell, I know that these are 2 different cell structures. 2 different cell types. So I would put that here. The similarities and the differences, well, it's written for me right here. Right? So I have my notes here already, and I have questions that I can use as a study guide. So that is how easy it is. How easy it is to create a study guide for yourself when you have no guidance, when your professor has not told you what to expect. Utilize the information that you do have. Don't just take, I don't have a study guide for an answer. Ask yourself, well, if I don't have a study guide that was given to me by my professor, what can I use to create a study guide for myself? Number 1, you can go directly to your professor and say, hey, where should I really focus my attention for this exam? I'm trying to create a study guide for myself, and I want to know if I should use the textbook as sort of a guide, or if I should use the PowerPoint as a guide, or if I should use what you talk about in the lecture. I'm really trying to create questions for myself. I'm trying to create a checklist for myself to make sure that I'm 100% prepared. What would you suggest, professor? And have them tell you. They might give you a study guide that they didn't give anyone else in class. They might not. But at least this gives you a place to start. The second place that you can look to help you figure out what to write down are any homework assignments, any practice exams, any syllabi, PowerPoints, textbook, worksheets, anything like that that they give you. You can use that to create your own study guide. And I know typically what a lot of students will say when I suggest this is they'll say, well, how do I know that I'm focusing on the right information? You'll know because you're using the information that your professor has given you. Most of the time, they're not just going to give you things that they won't test you on. And if they do, then that's a time and a place for you to have a conversation with your professor about that miscommunication. And you can be frank and honest with them and say, listen, professor, I didn't do as well as I wanted to do on this exam, and I'm trying to really figure out what went wrong. Here's what I did to study. I really focused on the textbook because you made it known to us that that was a requirement. So I really focused on the textbook as a way for me to create a study guide and a way for me to write my notes. But here's what I found. I found that most of the information that you tested us on didn't come from the textbook at all. It actually came from lecture. So just to make sure that I do really well on this next exam, I would love it if you could tell me where I should focus my attention. Should it be the PowerPoint or should it be the textbook? Should it be your lecture or should it be the textbook? The more conversations you have with your professor, the better you're going to do in the class. The mistake that you will make is not asking questions. The mistake that you will make is not asking for what it is that you need to actually succeed. Don't be afraid to have these kinds of conversations with your professors. They want to see you succeed, but they also want you to show initiative. Have conversations with them. Ask specific questions. Don't be afraid to show them what it is that you're doing, and do it early enough in the semester where they can actually show up and help you. So that was Work on You Wednesday's topic for today. How to create your own study guide for your exams when they're not already given to you. I hope that this video was helpful, and you can find me here every Wednesday morning at around 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time here on this YouTube channel. We do Work on You Wednesdays, where you'll see me giving you a tip to help you grow academically, to help you grow mentally, to help give you productivity tips so that you can see academic and life success. And every Thursday night at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here on this channel, we do a show called She Rocks at College Live, where I bring in guests to talk about different topics. Tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we actually have one of the marketers at Quizlet, and Quizlet is a tool, a flashcard tool that helps you to study for exams. So they're going to be coming on the show tomorrow to talk about how you can use Quizlet to help increase your grades. And we're going to be showing, how to set up your Quizlet cards, how to use them to test yourself, how to use all the features in Quizlet. And I'm sure you're familiar with what Quizlet is. If you're not, type in Quizlet in Google and you'll see the amazing tool that is. They're going to be on the show tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I will see you then, if not next week, back here on Wednesday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I hope you have a great rest of your week. Remember that you are smart enough, you are talented enough, and you are worthy enough of college and life success. All you need is a little bit of help and support, and that's what She Rocks at College is here for. Have a great rest of your hump day. Bye.